Missiles, rockets, jets, and automation fund. They like the stocks they own turn out to be an investing disaster. It is commonly accepted today that the cumulative earnings of the airline industry over its entire history have been negative. The lesson Graham is driving at is not that you should avoid buying airline stocks, but that you should never succumb to the certainty that any industry will outperform all others in the future. The author did not follow this approach in his financial career as fund manager, and he cannot offer either specific counsel or much encouragement to those who may wish to try it. What then will we aim to accomplish in this book? Our main objective will be to guide the reader against the areas of possible substantial error and to develop policies with which he will be comfortable. We shall say quite a bit about the psychology of investors, for indeed the investor's chief problem and even his worst enemy is likely to be himself. The fault, dear investor, is not in our stars and not in our stocks, but in ourselves. This has proved the more true over recent decades as it has become more necessary for conservative investors to acquire common stocks and thus to expose themselves willy-nilly to the excitement and the temptations of the stock market. By arguments, examples, and exhortation, we hope to aid our readers to establish the proper mental and emotional attitudes toward their investment decisions. We have seen much more money made and kept by ordinary people who were temperamentally well suited for the investment process than by those who lacked this quality, even though they had an extensive knowledge of finance, accounting, and stock market law. Additionally, we hope to implant in the reader a tendency to measure or quantify. For 99 issues out of 100, we could say that at some price they are cheap enough to buy, and at some other price they would be so dear that they should be sold. The habit of relating what is paid to what is being offered is an invaluable trait in investment. In an article in a woman's magazine many years ago, we advised the readers to buy their stocks as they bought their groceries, not as they bought their perfume. The really dreadful losses of the past few years and on many similar occasions before were realized in those common stock issues where the buyer forgot to ask how much. In June 1970, the question how much could be answered by the magic figure 9.40%, the yield obtainable on new offerings of high-grade public utility bonds. This has now dropped to about 7.3%, but even that return tempts us to ask, why give any other answer? But there are other possible answers, and these must be carefully considered. Besides which, we repeat that both we and our readers must be prepared in advance for the possibly quite different conditions of, say, 1973 to 1977. We shall therefore present in some detail a positive program for common stock investment, part of which is within the preview of both classes of investors, and part is intended mainly for the enterprising group. Strangely enough, we shall suggest as one of our chief requirements here that our traders limit themselves to issues selling not far above their tangible asset value. The reason for this seemingly outmoded counsel is both practical and psychological. Experience has taught us that while there are many good growth companies worth several times net assets, the buyer of such shares will be too dependent on the vagaries and fluctuations of the stock market. By contrast, the investor in shares, say of public utility companies at about their net asset value, can always consider himself the owner of an interest in sound and expanding businesses, acquired at a rational price, regardless of what the stock market might say to the contrary. The ultimate result of such a conservative policy is likely to work out better than exciting adventures into the glamorous and dangerous fields of anticipated growth. The art of investment has one characteristic that is not generally appreciated. A creditable, if unspectacular, result can be achieved by the lay investor with a minimum of effort and capability, but to improve this easily attainable standard requires much application and more than a trace of wisdom. If you merely try to bring just a little extra knowledge and cleverness to bear upon your investment program, instead of realizing a little better than normal results, you may well find that you have done worse, since anyone by just buying and holding a representative list can equal the performance of the market average. It would seem a comparatively simple matter to beat the average, but as a matter of fact, the proportion of smart people who try this and fail is surprisingly large. Even the majority of the investment funds, with all their experienced personnel, have not performed so well over the years as has the general market. Allied to the foregoing is record of the published stock market predictions of the brokerage houses, for there is strong evidence that their calculated forecasts have been somewhat less reliable than the simple tossing of a coin. In writing this book, we have tried to keep this basic pitfall of investment in mind. The virtues of a simple portfolio policy have been emphasized. The purchase of high-grade bonds plus a diversified list of leading common stocks, which any investor can carry out with a little expert assistance. The adventure beyond this safe and sound territory has been presented as fraught with challenging difficulties, especially in the area of temperament. Before attempting such a venture, the investor should feel sure of himself and of his advisors, particularly as to whether they have a clear concept of the differences between investment and speculation and between market price and underlying value. A strong-minded approach to investment, firmly based on the margin of safety principle, can yield handsome rewards, but a decision to try for these emoluments rather than for the assured fruits of defensive investment should not be made without much self-examination. A final retrospective thought: when the young author entered Wall Street in June 1940, no one had any inkling of what the next half century had in store. The stock market did not even suspect that a world war was to break out in 2 months and close down the New York Stock Exchange. Now in 1972, we find ourselves the richest and most powerful country on earth, but beset by all sorts a major problem and more apprehensive than confident of the future. Yet if we confine our attention to American investment experience, there is some comfort to be gleaned from the last 57 years. Through all their vicissitudes and casualties, as earth-shaking as they were unforeseen, it remained true that sound investment principles produce generally sound results. We must act on the assumption that they will continue to do so. Note to the reader: this book does not address itself to the overall financial policy of savers and investors. It deals only with that portion of their funds which they are prepared to place in marketable or redeemable securities, that is, in bonds and stocks. Consequently, we do not discuss such important media as savings and time deposits, savings and loan association accounts, life insurance, annuities, and real estate mortgages or equity ownership. The reader should bear in mind that when he finds the world now or the equivalent in the text, it refers to late 1971 no commentary on the introduction. If you have built castles in the air, your work need not to be lost. That is where they should be. Now put the foundations under them. Henry David Thoreau Walden. Notice that Graham announces from the start that this book will not tell you how to beat the market. No truthful book can. Instead, this book will teach you 3 powerful lessons. How you can minimize the odds of suffering irreversible losses. How you can maximize the chances of achieving sustainable gains. How you can control the self-defeating behavior that keeps most investors from reaching their full potential. Back in the boom years of the late 1990s, when technology stocks seemed to be doubling in value every day, the notion that you could lose almost all your money seemed absurd. But by the end of 2002, many of the dot-com and telecom stocks had lost 95% of their value or more. Once you lost 95% of your money, you have to gain 1900% just to get back to where you started. Taking a foolish risk can put you so deep in the hole that it is virtually impossible to get out. That is why Graham constantly emphasizes the Importance of avoiding losses not just in chapters 6, 14 and 20 but in the threads of warning that he has wound throughout his entire text. But no matter how careful you are, the price of your investments will go down from time to time. While no one can eliminate that risk, Graham will show you how to manage it and how to get your peers under control.